Welcome to today's episode of the Lindsey Elmore Show. In today's episode, we will be talking with two nonprofit organization founders. First, I'll be talking with Ben Cooley, founder of Hope for Justice, an organization that aims to eliminate modern-day slavery. I'll be talking with him about how to spot the signs of human trafficking in our day-to-day environment. Then I'll chat with Naomi Ackerman, the founder of the Advot project, about how theater can help people access their feelings, improve communication, and prevent bad behaviors in teens and young adults. Thank you so much for listening to the Lindsey Elmore Show. If you like it, please share it with your friends and let us know what additional topics you would like us to take on the show by sending us a suggestion to www.lindseyelmore.com/podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let's get on to our interview with Ben Cooley. Welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show, a podcast that helps you find fulfillment amidst chaos. On this show, I interview thought leaders, doctors, creatives, spiritual gurus, and game changers who inspire you to pursue your dreams, overcome obstacles, and leave your mark. Ben Cooley co-founded Hope for Justice in 2008 to bring an end to modern slavery and human trafficking. He rapidly grew it into a multi-award-winning charity with strong links with government and law enforcement. Hope for Justice now works in 32 locations across 5 continents. The charity's program reaches more than 71,000 children in the last year alone and successfully reintegrated more than 1,000 vulnerable and exploited minors back to their families or into family-based care. Under Ben's leadership, Hope for Justice trained more than 12,000 professionals this year to identify the signs of modern slavery and successfully worked with police to bring down the gang responsible for the largest human trafficking case in British history. The judge in the case called it an absolutely remarkable work. Now, Ben is prioritizing an expansion in Hope for Justice's preventative programs, through which more than 5,500 women in some of the poorest parts of the world have been empowered through self-help groups. These groups help to prevent family separation and human trafficking, and he's grown to be a sought-after speaker worldwide. I know that I've seen him on stage. I find him absolutely just passionately dedicated to the work that he does. And so it's my honor today to welcome Mr. Ben Cooley to the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Hey, how we doing? So good to be on.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, we have been chatting about what a crazy time that we are in, and I want to get back to what you think the future of charity might look like, because we are in the midst of today. We're filming, it's March 26th. We've been talking about the coronavirus and how this might impact your work. But before we get there, let's go back to, why did you start Hope for Justice? What inspired you?
Well, Lindsey, can I just say it's a privilege to be on your show. I'm a massive fan.
Thank you.
Love all that you bring and do, and I watch all of your stories on Instagram. So big fan.
Right back at you.
Well, it's so good. So I trained as an opera singer, so I used to wear tights and makeup and dance around on platforms, and I know
because of course you did. Of course.
Yeah. Well, I used to look good in tights. I mean, I still do now, but I thought I would just belong on a stage the whole of my life, and then I heard about. I went to this event in Manchester, England, and heard about the issue of modern day slavery. 27 million people caught in slavery, 1.2 million children a year sold, 2 children every minute, and I walked out of that building that night and I thought, wow, if that was my daughter, I would do something. And it was the next thought that changed the course of my life. They are someone's daughter, I should do something. So at the age of 26 years old, I did what any young, passionate 26-year-old would do. I booked an arena to tell people about it. And we got 5,884 people to our first event. And since then, you've just said it and read it out. We've now grown it to, in the last 10 years, to 10 countries, 32 locations, helped over 71,000 children last year. It's just
and so you're your theme of your podcast is Dear the 26-year-old me. And so you were audacious. Like, you put it all out there and just said, I'm going to book an arena and get 5,000 people to talk about this concept that a lot of people, I think, still find foreign. And so what would you tell somebody who's never even thought about modern day slavery, thinks that slavery is something way back in the past? What are the different types of slavery that people can be held in, and how big of a problem is this globally?
Well, I mean, it's a huge problem. And you're right. You know, I did a podcast largely because Dear 26-year-old me, because essentially I've learned a lot from developing an organization now and leading multidisciplinary teams and growing it to a multi-million-dollar organization. And one of the things that I thought about, and lots of leaders have come to me and said, you know, I'd love to do that, is I'd love to write a letter to my former self and say, you know, what have you, you know, Ben, this is what you should know. When you start Hope for Justice, Dear 26-year-old me. And so we did this podcast that kind of inspires people to have consolidated learning about what they've done so that they can pass it on to other people. Because that's what I believe leadership is about, is actually passing on the knowledge that you have. But in regards to your question about human trafficking and modern slavery, there's over 40 million people caught in slavery.
And that just seems unbelievable. 40 million people.
And it's actually why I talk, we've just talked about two themes there, leadership and human trafficking. And I think one of the most important things is that we need leaders to rise up in this time on this issue and to use their voice for things that matter. You know, over 20 million people are caught in forced labor. 18 million are in the private sector. And, you know, it's one of the reasons why we work with Fortune 500 companies, banks, large insurance companies, manufacturing companies. AstraZeneca, you might know, one of the companies that are part of our membership, Aviva, some of the large supermarkets across the world, because there are millions of people caught in our supply chains. I mean, we just have to look at, I'll give you an example. You know, we look at the rise of batteries and how we want to, you know, be careful of the environment, and, you know, we want our eco cars and our phones to last longer. And, you know, actually the impact of that is that there are children that are being enslaved in Congo, because over 70% of the world's cobalt mining comes from Congo. And so they're being exploited, beaten, withheld food, like they're being tortured on a daily basis, not paid. For what? For capitalism, for us to have better, smarter vehicles. You know, we've got to have that tension to marry. And so that's what we are as a Hope for Justice. We rescue victims, we restore lives, but we actually speak truth to power, and we say, you know what? Enough is enough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you look at the rise of fast clothing, cheap clothing, and then all of a sudden you have factories collapsing in Bangladesh with thousands of people trapped inside. And as you mentioned, not getting paid. And so is the scale of this getting bigger? Because, you know, we've heard about children caught up in sugarcane and coffee and the cocaine trade. Is the scale of this getting bigger, or are we making any strides?
Yeah, well, we are making strides. I mean, in reality, you know, like last year, you might have seen on CNN, Fox News, BBC, we broke down the largest gang in British history. But I think one of the interesting things is now 71% of businesses believe they have slavery in their supply chain. And so if you think about that, then actually the reality of what is happening is it's not just in mining, nor is it in the kind of industries that you would think would be exploiting people, but actually it's in our normal brands that we are purchasing from our malls and from our supermarkets. So I think the three types of slavery that we are focused on, a lot is talked about sex trafficking. So we rescue victims from sex trafficking on a daily basis. In fact, do you know, Lindsey, I was just 2 weeks ago, I was in Uganda, and before this coronavirus landed us all, and I was actually with a 3-month-old baby that we just rescued. That we actually have had to pay for corrective surgery because of what a man did or what
Oh
men
my
would do to
God.
a female baby. And
Just
so,
how does the world get this bent? It's
yeah,
one of
and
those
it's
things.
heartbreaking.
So, yes, absolutely.
Um,
Okay, so sex trafficking is
yeah,
one of the types
for-
of
forced labor is one of the other
okay.
major ones, and so
Okay.
that's your factories. In fact, we work with governments all across the world now to address this because we broke down the first ever slavery in the supply chains case in Britain was we rescued 33 people from a factory that were making beds for two of the largest retailers in the UK. And
Mm-hmm.
that inspired a legislation that's now been echoed across the world that's compelling businesses that if they have a turnover of 36 million or more, they have to put a modern slavery statement together to say what they're doing to address slavery in the supply chains.
Wow.
And then the third type of slavery is domestic servitude. That's the hardest to identify. And, we've rescued sex trafficking victims in America, we've rescued forced labor victims. But actually, one of the cases that we actually rescued a victim of domestic servitude in LA, actually. And we trained thousands of individuals on how to spot the signs of human trafficking. And this woman went on our course, and this trafficking victim who was held, she only spoke a particular dialect of the Filipino language. She was held in slavery and she got sick. And so the trafficker slave owner in LA decided she was so confident to take her to the hospital because this person only spoke a certain dialect in the Filipino language. Well, she went to the hospital and the nurse that was trained by Hope for Justice spoke that very dialect.
Oh,
And they were able to speak and that nurse phoned our office. We worked with the FBI. Within 24 hours, that woman was free. And that was the first moment, Lindsey, in 37 years that woman breathed a breath of freedom.
oh my gosh. Okay, so help us as just average individuals. Let's start talking about airports. We're not
Yeah.
mostly in airports right now, but we are typically going through airports, through malls, through sporting events. I mean, there was a lot of news this year that the Super Bowl may have been a massive sex trafficking crimes going down and human trafficking in general. So when we're out and about in these very public places, what are
Mm-hmm.
a few things that we should look out for?
Well, I think it's looking out for vulnerability. So it's actually looking out for people if there's a young girl with an older man and it doesn't look right. And I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the younger girl seems fearful, scared, jittery. You can look out for, like in factories, for example. One of the easy ways of spotting modern slavery in a factory is how do the people arrive? Most of the cases that we deal with, they're dropping off in big vans and they're coming
Mm,
out, walking out like disheveled human beings. Um,
right.
some of the sex trafficking cases that we've identified is people are looking at the house on their street and saying, hang on 2 ticks, men keep on coming by all the time, every day, in
Mm-hmm.
apartment blocks. Why does a man every hour arrive at this? So it's things like that you can look at. We rescued a girl that didn't even know what city she was in. And it's being able to talk and ask questions and probe. I say this about leadership. The best leaders ask the best questions, right? Well, actually, I say that about actually investigators. The best investigators ask the best questions. Just probe, just ask. And then once you kind of got a little inkling, there's several ways that you can do. You can talk to our staff, hopeforjustice.org. You can go on our website and talk to our staff, or you can call the human trafficking hotline in America. But there's great ways that you can find. Now, if you believe that someone has got a threat to life, call law enforcement every time.
Okay. And so you mentioned a moment ago that domestic servitude was one of the hardest things to recognize. And so we all have neighbors. What might we look out for to know that someone is being held against their will and being forced to serve a family? Because, a family can just say, this is our nanny. This is our maid. This is, oh, she's been with us for 37 years. That is type of language that you as a neighbor are like, what nice people. But what might feel or look off?
Yeah. Well, I think that's where you've got to try and probe a little bit and ask questions and try and speak to the person that was held in slavery for 37 years. Now, if someone had actually spoken to that woman, they would have realized in 37 years, she has never learned the language.
Mm,
In 37 years, she's never taken a holiday or
mm.
vacation. In 37 years, she hasn't really been going out of the property. And so it would be people that would be going into the house and getting to know the family that could ask the questions of going, how did she arrive? She doesn't seem to have the same level of freedom. Or even like we rescued a chap in London that was held in slavery for 24 years. And actually he was sleeping in the toilet under the stairs for 24 years. And so if someone was just seeing those living conditions, that's how you do it. But it's often entrenched in culture. And so culture is one of the hardest things to understand, because people will explain it away going, well, this is cultural. But in reality, you're in America, people need to be paid. You're in America, people need to be free.
Right. I know that this is a major theme that I have learned about the work of Hope for Justice as well as other organizations in Cambodia. It is the expectation that the younger generation take care of the older generation. And so, even if that means that a person is subjecting themselves to cruel treatment, to prostitution, to running drugs against their will, to whatever it is still that expectation that I must care for an organization. And so when you do rescue people out of these situations, where do you even begin restoring the sense of,
Yeah.
and perhaps even instilling the first sense of self-worth?
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we've invested heavily into short-term and long-term residential treatment centers, trauma-informed care that helps a girl when we do rescue them to start on the road to recovery. We say this often: rescue isn't an event; it's a process. And taking a
Mm-hmm.
child that's been through some of the most traumatic experiences, and then being able to give them psychosocial support, we give them catch-up education. If depending on the age, we'll use things like play therapy, art therapy. We'll start dealing with the trauma, and then we'll start giving them an action plan to either being reintegrated to their family, or independent living, or foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And that for us, we are just a moment in their recovery, and we try and give them the tools with behavioral therapy. But ultimately, the aim is to get them back into a family that's a living family, so that they can actually not just survive but thrive in life. And one of the great things about Hope for Justice is actually you have a 92% success rate on
Wow.
children staying with their family after we reintegrate them.
That's really profound because it is very easy, especially in extremely poor countries, to just slide back into it. You run into that guy on the street and just here's a little bit more heroin or a little bit more cocaine, whatever drugs are being manipulated, or here's a hot meal that you haven't seen in a long time. So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but creating distance seems like it must be really important, but that also has to weigh on the rescued psyche of this is where I've always been, this is what I've always known. How do you address those fears that my person's always going to be coming for me? Because this person, the rescued person has been manipulated for so
Yeah.
many years
Mhm.
to systematically break them down. And so, what do you also do? Are there other tactics that you use not
Yeah.
only to instill the self worth, but to actually help them understand that they are safe now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, there's always risk in for victims of modern slavery and human trafficking. But there's one well-known proverb that says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so he is." And there's something really profound about giving people the right thought patterns, and cognitive behavioral therapy will teach you about how to actually start addressing your thought patterns, because your thinking affects your attitude, and your attitude determines the course of your life, right? And so all
Mm-hmm.
of us right now have been exposed to trauma. I mean, all of us have had, and we'll all react differently to trauma. And so it's about actually giving people action plans with their thinking patterns. So when they see someone, when that man approaches them, when they look at the same, walk down that street that happened, all of us can do that in our relationships. When people say things, it triggers certain emotions. And it's the tools then that you are given to actually take captive that thought and then to bring it down to a kind of a core understanding of what we're teaching, which is this: it is over. The trafficking experience is over. That they are in charge of their future. That they are worth a future, and that they can actually design a better future for themselves. And so, teaching them those habits and then thought patterns can actually anchor them into a better future.
Absolutely. Well, we were speaking earlier about the coronavirus and the potential impact that it might have not only on your organization, but charitable organizations across the entire globe. You are facing a moment where you have to find a new way to reinvent yourself as a leader. How do you continue with business development? How do you continue to clearly communicate your messages? For any of your fellow charity owners, small business owners, restaurant owners who are facing a moment of panic, what's going through your mind about how do you invest in yourself so that you can further invest in other people?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question, that, Lindsey. And I think one of the things that a lot of us through this period are frustrated, right? In just in the UK market alone, they're predicting in the next 3 months a £400 million drop in investments into charities, 40% potentially from charities that is going to be lost from income. And so, I can look at that from a period of from a CEO of a charity and look at that and get incredibly frustrated. I could look at that and go, oh my gosh, that I'm not going to be able to achieve that. I'm not going to be able to survive in this situation. But I think the attitude of not just a survivor, but a thriver looks at frustration differently. And for me, frustration is the precursor to innovation. And, you look at Thomas Edison, right? He was frustrated and he was like, everyone was sat in the dark and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm sat in the dark. This sucks. Candles keep on burning me. But he was frustrated and he did something good with that frustration and asked the question, said, how can we solve this? How can we develop something? What can be invented? And suddenly that frustration became innovation, and we got the light bulb. A woman called Josephine was frustrated at plates that kept on getting cracked every night with washing them, and she took that frustration, did something with it, and guess what? She innovated in the dishwasher game, which hallelujah for dishwasher. Declare. And I think now we've got to look at this and go, yeah, the world is going to be different. And it's going to be different because the rules have changed. And they have changed. This is unprecedented days. And so those that will survive and thrive are those that actually realize not the business that they were in, doing what you've always done and you'll get what you've always got. That isn't true. It wasn't true weeks ago, but it certainly isn't true right now. Do what you've always done. You won't survive, and you don't have a right to survive right now, right? You don't. As a business owner, as you go, well, I used to. Well, good for you. The game and the rules has changed. Now it's time to innovate. And, one of the most inspirational stories for me to inspire me to keep on going right now is that of Blockbusters. Because Blockbusters, when I was a kid, Lindsey, I don't know if you used to do this, but every Friday night I used to go down and get a DVD. And
it was a big deal. It was a big deal to get to go to the Blockbuster on the corner,
Like their version of innovation was they did a Dropbox, and you were like, that's so cool. Now I can know late fees, because I can put it through. But then society changed, and it was like online streaming came, Netflix came along, and Blockbusters had the opportunity to buy Netflix, but they didn't because they thought that they were in the DVD and video business, but they weren't. They were in the entertainment business, and they missed an opportunity. And then now, where's Blockbusters?
Right. It's a relic that young children and teenagers don't even know about. You can tell the same story with Kodak Film. They were in the film business, but no, they were actually in just photography in general. But I
And so for me,
agree.
in this season right now, if we are going to thrive, right, and I'm saying this to people that do multi-level marketing, I'm saying this to people that are doing their own small businesses, is you need to innovate, pivot, and every little bit makes a difference. And a lot of people come up to me and say, Ben, I don't think my bit matters. Sorry, I'm trying to do a little bit of an American accent. I do declare.
It was believable. It really was.
They say, Ben, it doesn't matter, my little bit. It's a little bit of a change. And I'm going, well, no one raindrop ever felt responsible for the flood. Like, if
Yes.
we can all just do our little bits together as humanity, actually, I believe that we can send a tsunami of positivity into the future. And let me tell you, what we need right now is leaders that are speaking positivity. Because
Yes.
being positive in a negative situation isn't naive, it's leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Putting people at ease and actually leveraging the resources that we have to care for people in this moment, and I agree with you. I push back on people all of the time who say, they're like, oh, Lindsey, you've got this huge social media following. You're talking to so many people. Yeah, but I started with zero, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
You started with zero and then packed an arena because you were like, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to add value to people's lives. I'm going to do my part to change the world. And everyone has a part to play. And I think that's really important. And so looking for the signs of human trafficking, domestic servitude, sex slavery, forced labor in your neighborhood is one way that you can go about it. You can also check out Ben's work over at www.hopeforjustice.org. He did mention a moment ago that if you're in the United States and you see the signs of human trafficking or just want to talk to somebody, you can call 1-888-373-7888. That's 1-888-373-7888 or text 233-733. Text help or info. If you think that you may be a victim of human slavery and actually get your hands on a cell phone, you text help to 233-733. So, Ben, before I let you go, you ready for some lightning round questions?
Do it. I'm excited.
All right, here we go. What is your number one strength?
Positivity.
What is the thing that you struggle with the most?
Weight gain.
Oh, especially during the time of quarantine. I saw a post the other day that said, I am either going to come out of this quarantine 20 pounds lighter with all of my chakras aligned or 20 pounds heavier and an alcoholic. So remember that, dear friends. Yeah. Don't reach for the bottle. It never helps. Yeah. If you could say one thing to your younger self, what would it be?
Fight like you. Don't try and be someone else.
There you go. I love that. Don't try to be anybody other than who you are. What keeps you up at night?
The fact that I haven't a girl that we in India that was in a brothel and we didn't get her out, and that was devastating to me.
Oh, well, let us all send just love and prayers to her wherever she may be. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
Gosh, it should be a quick fire around this. Martin Luther King. His final speech. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight we will reach the promised land. Profound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is such an inspiration and such a wonderful leader who leads with peace and with love, which I think we need in this moment. Last question. God to you is?
A carpenter.
Oh, I love that. Put the work in, make things happen. Yeah. Well, Ben Cooley is the founder of Help for Justice and a dear friend of mine, and I have enjoyed working with him and supporting his organization for years. Please go in this time of need and support hopeforjustice.org. Thank you, Ben.
Nice to cheers. See ya.
40.3 million people in the world are victims of forced labor, sexual exploitation, domestic servitude, and forced marriage. Hope for Justice exists to bring an end to modern slavery by preventing exploitation, rescuing victims, helping them to restore their lives, and reforming society. I love this organization, their leadership, and their commitment to give as many resources as possible to rescuing victims. If you would like to join the mission to end modern day slavery, head to www.hopeforjustice.org/donate. That's www.hopeforjustice.org/donate. Join me in supporting the movement to end modern slavery. Naomi Ackerman is the founder and director of the Advot Project, a nonprofit that uses theater to teach communication skills and healthy relationships. Her curriculum, Relationships 101, is currently implemented in public and private schools as well as in juvenile detention camps. Naomi's acclaimed one-woman show that she directed, produced, and wrote, Flowers Aren't Enough, has been presented over 2,000 times globally, including at the United Nations. Naomi travels around the world consulting for organizations and creating innovative, interactive curriculum that uses performing arts to explore issues like gender identity, tolerance, and open dialogue. For the past 3 decades, she has used art to promote peace, evolve change, and encourage self-empowerment. She is the 2018 Covenant Award recipient for Excellence in Jewish Education. It's my honor today to welcome Naomi Ackerman. Thanks for being on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
It's my pleasure and also my honor and privilege. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm very excited to you. This whole episode today is dedicated to human rights. So tell me, what was it that got you interested in working with young people at risk? And then why did you decide to use performing arts as a way to change conversations among young people at risk?
Well, a few decades ago, I got a BA in education and special education. And I always used storytelling and the arts as a mean and tool to educate because it is live and interactive and real and you can touch it and feel it. And I wasn't really satisfied with that. And I went to acting school. And really going to acting school and honing in on my craft was because I kind of literally wanted a stage also for my social action. And from a very young age, I was about having messages, fighting for what is right, which is something that I was raised with my parents, raised through my Jewish values of mending the world. And what was amazing is that this vision that I have of creating a better world and using the arts as the language to create that world actually unraveled kind of in front of me. It started off just to make money. I was performing as a clown, and with a group of clowns, we realized that what a great way to heal, and started the seed of what today is an amazing organization, which is called Dream Doctors, that is medical clowning in Israel. I then founded a Arab Jewish theater group that really not only talked about dialogue, but showed dialogue firsthand, where we were standing on the stage, Palestinian actors, Israeli actors, Arab actors, Jewish actors speaking. And, you know, it's kind of like, I once read on Facebook, if I tell you that you hurt me, you can't tell me that you didn't, right?
Right.
So if I show you dialogue, you can't tell me that it can't happen, right? So this marriage of social justice, of creating a voice, not by talking about it, but by using theater, was almost like a prearranged marriage that worked really well. So I brought these two passions of mine together and said, let's show the world how I want it to be. And, you know, I had the great fortune, kind of by chance, to be commissioned by the Ministry of Welfare in Israel to write this one-woman show called Flowers Aren't Enough, about domestic violence. And because it originated in Hebrew, then we translated into Arabic, and then I translated into English. And when I started doing it in English, I started traveling around the globe because sadly, there isn't a place on our planet where domestic violence isn't happening. And
Nope.
then that message of seeing is believing, and the arts have the power to heal, really became rooted deeply, because everywhere I went, no matter if it was rural India or townships in South Africa, Beverly Hills, or Tel Aviv, the power of theater, even if they didn't understand English or the language that I was performing, was profound.
Mm-hmm.
And as I went on this journey of traveling the globe and talking about, excuse me, women's empowerment and talking about healthy relationships, it became clear to me that, I mean, we all struggle with healthy relationships.
Yes, we
We
do.
we all struggle with communication.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for teens, if they figure out how to deal with their struggles when they're starting on their relationship journey, and we give them tools, we can assure that later on, maybe the struggle will be a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as I started performing more and more with teens, it really affirmed this belief that the key for all of us to succeed are the relationships that we have in our life. And the key to those relationships is how we communicate
Mm-hmm.
and how we express ourselves. And, particularly in people, and especially youth who've grown up with a lack, or who have grown up without love, and most important, role modeling of how to ask something, how to stand up for yourself, they're starting so far behind that they don't even try.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like a really organic progression of knowing that theater has power, seeing it in my own work, and evolving through the work. How can I maximize this tool that I have as a performer, as an educator, and as an activist to create the most change that I can? And really the bottom line is that we don't create the change. We give tools for people to create change in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's, I can tell you that our tagline, and I'll just kind of tilt my camera,
Yeah.
is listen, act, and change.
Right.
And really, that's what the arts is about. Bring it, take a little bit. So,
and you can see, I could easily see why theater is a great vehicle to get people talking about difficult issues, because theater is disarming. The whole basis of improv is you have to listen very carefully to what the other person is saying, or else you're going to throw a line out on stage that doesn't make any sense. And the other bottom line rule of improv is you never say no. It's always yes, and that can completely transform conversations when you're talking about people who have dramatically different worldviews, dramatically different backgrounds, religious traumas, racial traumas that go back generations and generations. And it can open up conversations. And I love what you said, because it's something that I remember the first time I read something similar to what you just said. I read it in a book called Crucial Conversations, and that is how to talk when times are tough. And what you said was, if I say I feel this, you can't argue with that. And that is 100% true. If I feel something, no one can tell me that I actually don't feel that way. And that's a dramatic transformation in conversations, to be able to shift from "you did this to me" to "when you exhibited those behaviors, it made me feel like this." And so tell us about your Relationships 101, where you really help young people in school learn some basic talking points. Even just something as simple as what we just said. Instead of saying "you did this," talk about the way you feel.
I would even yes, and
Yes.
so on the button, it's I always say you can say no later. just say yes now, right? But, you know, one of the first times that I went into one of the lockup facilities in LA County, they were all very skeptic. Like, how are you going to do theater with these gangbangers? And these are really tough guys. And how are you going to do this? And the truth is, they were kind of not the kids, the probation officers were so skeptic. And, you know, I got a little bit worried, and I never pull out the fact that I was in the Israeli military, because it's not relevant.
Right.
And here I am sitting in the LA County probation officer, and I was like, I was a sergeant in the Israeli army. I had nothing else to give them. Like, what was I going to say? I have faith in myself. I use that. But what was really interesting is I walked into this room, and there were 10 guys.
And so wait, these youth, or these are grown men?
No, so the LA County, and I can only talk about our county, which just, by the way, in the last few years, incredible reform and change is happening in our juvenile justice system. But I'm talking now about 8 years ago, no, it's 10 years ago already, was the first time that I went in. So in the juvenile lockup facilities, typically are youth from age 13 to 18. By the grace of God, the judge, if you had just turned 18, if you don't have any other convictions, will maybe send you to the juvenile lockup facility, because they call them camps, because they're a little bit like army camps. They're not in cells. They're in like a one big sleeping area, and there's a gym, and there's a dining room, and they have school. So even though freedom is taken away, there is a recognition that these are younger people, and there could be a possibility of rehabilitation. I mean, you know, I don't want to get into the history of why they made it like this, but this is a better environment than county. So the first time that I walked in, the guys had their gang mask on, so tough, and, you know, they're like leaning back and like, what's up, you know, and they're leaning out. And I stopped for a minute, and I said to one of the guys, I said, you know, when you look at me like that, I'm scared. Like, if you're trying to scare me, you're scaring me. And also, I feel like your homie's outside stealing my car, and you don't want me to be scared or not like you. You want me to come every week. I'm on your side. I'm going to bring you snacks. I'm your friend. So by you even looking at me like that, in that, like, yo, like gang guy face, you are succeeding to push me away. And sometimes you actually want people to lean in. And, you know, you don't want to push me away, because I'm that person who's going to come every week. And I'm that person who's going to have fun with you. And I'm that person who believes in you to no end. And, you know, that's the first conversation. Like, don't lean back, lean in. And that's a huge thing to ask from someone who's had trauma, from someone who everybody in their life has disappointed them. And that's exactly to play on what you said. We tend to point the finger. And when we've been hurt, we never want to say yes, because why say yes? And I had to work very hard with each group to just show them that I'm sincere. And, you know, I had to show up every week. I would be really careful if I wasn't coming. I'd say, I'm not going to be here next week because I'm doing this and this and that, but I'll be here the week after. And, you know, it's building trust and teaching that you're not what happened to you. And you are the master of your story. And don't turn into that one page that was bad. Right. Because you have so much potential, but you also have control over the potential, and how you talk and how you speak is going to influence that. You know, we had one, I later moved to the girls' facilities, and I had this one girl, and she was phenomenal. And she just really, she was getting her GED, and she was just behaving really well. And we were all kind of rallying for her to get early release. And we were prepping her. I wrote a letter, and when she went to court, you know, we were all excited, and I came the next week, and I was sure that she wouldn't be back. And I walked in, and she was there, and I was like, what happened? And she said, well, you know, I told the judge that he should let me go out because I've been good, and I should, and like, she used the word, like 7 times. And I looked at her and I said, did you say the F word that many times? And she says, yeah, but I said a whole bunch of other good things. I said, oh, it's shocking that he did in the early police, right? So it's about raising awareness to the power of words.
Right.
I have 3 amazing teenage, which makes them less amazing, daughters. And I watch how they naturally, all 3 of them babysit. And I always get these amazing texts from the people that they babysit. Oh my God, Zohar is my oldest. She washed all the dishes in the sink. And I'm like, that's fascinating because she doesn't really
do that at home.
Or Ella, my other one, she folded all the laundry. Or, Hadar, she did it. Like, they know where to behave in certain ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you did not grow up with someone teaching you that,
mm-hmm.
if you did not grow up with role models who show you to say thank you very much or I'm really sorry, then everybody's your enemy,
mm-hmm.
right? So that's a really strong wall that we kind of have to combat when we work with youth at risk. And what's beautiful is that when you soften that wall, then amazingness happens. I've
mm-hmm.
seen kids get out of incarceration, go to college, get a job, turn their lives around, go into rehab, get clean, and change is so possible. And people who write these kids off because they've done shenanigans or whatever, they just don't get it. And
they don't understand the systematic problems that led them to this place where they didn't have a parent at home because their parents are working 3 jobs to just barely put food on the table. And, there's a lot of systemic things that lead to, especially children, being incarcerated. Adults, you can say, okay, come on, you're grown. But kids sometimes are just trying to make ends meet. I mean, I remember one time watching a documentary about a group of people that a lot of people would just be like, they're a hate group. I'm not putting up with it. And they asked one of the children, like, why did you continue to show up at these meetings with these people who were forcing you to do these horrible things? And he just said, I was hungry. I was hungry and they fed me.
I know that it's about even more simple things than understanding the hate group. We have a scholarship fund, which is actually in memory of my mom. It's called the Franny Possibility Fund. My mom was a social worker and an amazing human. And the fund is to support kids who participated in our programs and are trying to get some type of higher education or vocational training. And one of the kids got into a community college, and she was a kid who grew up in LAUSD, which is our unified school district that gives breakfast, lunch, and sometimes if you stay after school, dinner. So she never brought food to school. Her mom worked a million jobs. And she said to me, Naomi, food on campus is really expensive. And I was like, you're not supposed to buy food on campus. Like, well, where am I supposed to get food, right? She didn't. And I realized that she was hungry, right? She doesn't have food. She's in an immigrant household facility where there's an immigrant household situation where there's a lot of people in one house. She grew up in high school and elementary school getting food. And I realized that we probably should add to her stipend money for food, but also I need to teach her to make a sandwich and to actually take lunch. And we went to Smart and Final and we bought all these different things. And I kind of walked her through what I do for my children for lunch, right? And we got her a lunchbox, blah, blah, blah. I had to call one of the major people who gave money to this fund and say, I need to add a tagline or a line on our expenses because she's hungry. And this is a savvy businessman. Mm-hmm. This is no stupid human. This is not by any means someone who doesn't understand life. And he says, what does that mean she's hungry?
Right.
So I said exactly what I said to you now. She went to LAUSD. She got breakfast, lunch, and blah, blah, the whole story. And it was like quiet. And he had met this particular kid in one of our presentations or one of our galas or whatever. And he says to me, she doesn't look like someone who's hungry. And
How
now,
can you tell? How can you
right?
tell?
So I know this man is generous. He's given us, he understands it. He gets that the arts, like so many people don't get the arts, but yet this concept of being hungry, of this sweet, beautiful young woman who he met was foreign to him.
Yeah.
And I think for all of us, even something like I said, living in an immigrant situation, you know, my kids right now are at home. They each have a computer. We have a Netflix account that everybody can watch their own thing, their own whatever, right? I don't think they even understand what privilege that is. And that's, you know,
100%.
thank God that you have privilege and you don't understand. Like, thank God for this amazing businessman that he could say, what?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And thank God that he was amazing. And he says, if that's what she needs, of course, right? But not everybody's that generous. And not everybody understands when you don't have certain things that we take for granted, the immense obstacle that it creates for someone, like being hungry, like being tired because you don't have a safe place to sleep, like being cold. I am disgusting when I'm cold. Like, don't talk to me, right? If I didn't have a sweater on right now, I'd be like, what do you want, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, no, people don't understand how privilege really does make a huge difference in our abilities to succeed. And so I love the experiment where they lined up a group of teenagers and said, okay, so we're all going to run a race. The finish line is over there. And if you grew up with two parents in your home, take 2 steps forward. If you had private education, take 3 steps forward. If you had 3 meals a day, anytime that you wanted it throughout your entire life, take 10 steps forward. If you if you had access to arts education when you were a youth, take 5 steps forward. All of these things. And then they're like, okay, well, let's start the race now. And all the kids that are like, wait, what? That are still back at the starting line because they were raised by a single parent, didn't have the opportunity to go to private school, never got to do arts, never got any type of, never got special meals 3 times a day. I mean, it is a real situation that unfortunately a lot of people don't even want to acknowledge. And so we're rapidly running out of time, but I do want to find out about your Advot project. And you told me that Advot means ripple in Hebrew, and you write a blog called The Ripple Effect.
yes.
So how can each of us in our day-to-day life cast a stone into a pond and create positive ripples in our communities around us? What are some simple action steps that anyone can take?
That is an amazing question. I really believe that you don't have to climb the Kilimanjaro. It's really about small acts. And of course, I would love everybody to donate and support to the Advot project and go on to the advotproject.org and support us, because I wanted to add something about what you said before. I love that in that experiment, they added arts education, because what people don't understand about the importance about art education is that it's not just about doing a play or creating a picture. Art education creates critical thinking. Using creativity makes you a problem solver. Mm-hmm. By learning creativity, you learn how to express your needs. So art education is not about feeling good. It's about acquiring really important life skills. And that's why if you don't have the arts in your life, you're taking 3 steps back. So going back to what I said before, yes, of course, I want you to support us, but support any nonprofit that's doing the work. Support nonprofits that are doing art, because nobody understands what we do. People think, oh, people need food, people need shelter. So we're sometimes at the bottom of the totem pole of nonprofits, but we need art also. And believe me, in the lockup facilities, it's the arts that break down the walls. Mm-hmm. It's the arts that ease the pain. It's the arts that give them a break from those walls that are closing down on them. So, mm-hmm. And if you don't have money, volunteer. There in every organization, including ours, so many possibilities to volunteer, to mentor. It has been shown and proven for youth at risk, all they need in their life is one person to say, I got you.
Oh, yeah.
One person to say, I believe in you. Because if you have one person who says, I believe in you, that can be the game changer. And I invite and I ask you, anybody who's listening and hearing, be that person. And it doesn't even have to be a meeting in person if you don't have time. There are online forums. There's tutoring. You know, we have kids who've succeeded, who did our program, and it's a village. This person tutored them in math. That person got them groceries. This person helped them do their applications. If you are good at something, do that something with some organization. You like whatever, go online, find out who's doing the whatever, and give an hour a week, an hour a month, because that is how nonprofits like mine survive. I have angels that plop in. I have this fierce community. We had a woman, she's already a little bit older. I've known her for a few years, 6 years, ended up in county jail. She got out of jail. It was right before Christmas, really miraculously. We kept laughing because Hanukkah was before Christmas. It was like the Hanukkah miracle that she got custody of her children, but she had nothing. And I just posted on Facebook, and it was crazy. We got a Christmas tree. We got gifts. And you know what? I don't think any of my people gave more than $20. We created on Amazon a wish list. So don't think that it's about the money, and also don't think that it's about the time. We're all overwhelmed. It's about taking a moment. And I called my organization the Advot Project because it really is this crazy ripple effect. And they say that tsunamis start from tiny little ripples. So I know that sometimes I use the metaphor of a tsunami and people are like, what? Not bad. I think of it as power. And I have this amazing privilege to witness change all the time. I have this amazing privilege to watch people run through walls, break down walls, and I invite everybody to have that privilege, because it doesn't give your life meaning. It's the meaning of life. To do good, to witness people overcoming, it changes your life. We have these conceptions about volunteering, about donating money, or about nonprofits, and I kind of want to shift the paradigm. And if you read my blog, The Ripple Effect, it's really about that intersection of me being a mom, my own children, and these amazing young adults and students of mine who are so much more my teachers than I'm their teacher, and how it gives such important perspective about what's important and what's not and what's possible. And, we throw around words like everything is possible. I don't think everything is possible. I think anything is possible. And that's, to me, exhilarating.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your work and for helping to raise a generation of girls and boys and women that deserve a leg up and deserve someone at their back. And as you said, I think one of the most inspiring things that you said today was all people need is just one person to say, I've got your back. So go check out Naomi's work with the Advot Project. That is www.theadvotproject.org. Naomi Ackerman, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
The Advot Project uses the power of theater, music, dance, and the arts to help young people build communication and relationship skills. Advot means ripple in Hebrew, and the organization hopes that simply by casting one stone into the river, that it creates a ripple effect where young people actually know how to communicate their needs and know their worth. The thing I love most about this organization is that there is no person left behind. Their work extends to at-risk youth in detention centers, schools, and even simply sharing within homes. To donate to the Advot Project, head to www.theadvotproject.org. That's www.theadvotproject.org. The Lindsey Elmore Show is written and produced by me, Lindsey Elmore. Show segments are produced by Sue Procco and Kelsey Lorman. Production design, sound design, and editing is by Jive Media. If you have a question about this or any other episode of the podcast, send us an email to hello@lindseyelmoreshow.com. And hey, since you're still here, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And while you're at it, go over and follow us on Instagram @Lindsey Elmore Show. This helps us bring the pod to more people.